Amanda, you're very welcome back. Didn't that work great? When we said last week to give us really clear voice notes just the texts are great, but voice notes is where it's at, and that's where you get your chance to get your question. Voice note has a much better chance of getting a question here.
Absolutely.
How many questions have we got today?
We have 3.
And haven't just said that one of them's going to be read out, isn't it?
One of them is going to be read out, but we had a lot of questions in for this particular topic, but a lot kind of fell in under the same kind of categories as what we're covering on the Q&A segment. So
okay,
we should be covering it all in some aspects across the podcast.
Okay, let's go for question 1.
Hey, obviously had a question around the pensions. I have just started a new job, and I know you've seen before that you've said not to consolidate the pension from my old job. So I'm wondering, do I just leave my old pension there and start a new pension? And what would be the reason for that?
Okay, so actually this was one of those posts that I did during lockdown, and I was out running and I was thinking about it, and I stopped and I put it up, and then the one that you're out running and you're sweaty and you're looking like shite, and that's the one that gets the most views. We must actually post that the day that this episode goes out. Let's post that about this particular topic. My problem with moving an old pension into a new pension, when you leave a job, you've got 3 options. The first option is to leave the pension where it is, if they'll let you. Sometimes they'll force you to move it off somewhere else, right? If they're winding up the scheme in particular. The second option is to move it into your new company pension scheme. So your old job and your new job get put together. And the third option is that you put it into a buyout bond or a personal retirement bond. Just it's a pension bond in your own name. Okay? So leave it where it is, move it to your new job, or move it into your own name. What you do is dependent on charges, right? But one of the things you're not going to ever do, you might leave it where it is, or you might move it into your own name. And making that decision will be to do with charges and to do with fund choices. So what can you invest in? Okay. What you never do, or what I don't believe makes sense ever, is, and actually there's a challenge. If anyone says, no, this is where it makes sense, I'm still to come across a good rational reason as to why you'd move it into your new job. Okay. My problem with it is that moving it into your new job means you've now mixed the old job and the new job together. Okay? They're muddled up and you can never detach them again. You can never separate them off. They have become one, and that's it, right? And when it comes to pensions, after the age of 50, you can access a pension that relates to a job that you're no longer in. Okay. Okay? So if you're working for company A and you leave and you go to company B, right? And you hit 51 years of age and you're still working for company B, you can access the pension you created when you were in company A. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Now, it's never a good idea to access it, but if you need to, the option is there. The longer you can leave pensions closed, the better, right? So once you put the two of them together, the only way you're accessing that from 50 years of age onwards is if you leave company B. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And that, to me, financial planning is all about choices and keeping the options on your side of the table. There's no real advantage to putting them together. Like, pensions are typically, like 99.99% of the time, ordinary pensions, like an occupational pension scheme like they're talking about, is based on, the charges is based on percentages. Okay. So you're paying 1.5% of 100,000 is exactly the same charges as 1.5% of 50,000 and 50,000. So you're not getting any advantage by putting the two of them together. Some people might argue, well, what about if I lose it? Like, come on, just let's get some records together and don't lose it, because you're really taking options off the table. So the reason why I don't like putting them together is because when it comes to drawdown, you have more options. Even in normal retirement age, you hit 65 years of age, you'll dip into pot B first and company B pension first, and you'll work through that, and you'll leave A closed or vice versa for as long as you can, because the longer you leave pensions closed, the better. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. It's more so you're putting more restrictions on yourself if you choose to merge them together, whereas I suppose you can access it that bit earlier. You can do whatever you want with it. And I know you're saying try leave it as, but you're giving yourself more options. Yeah. If you have a pension that's in a previous company and then you move on. Yeah.
Financial planning is all about keeping your options on your side of the table, but not to the detriment of your finances. And this is a really clear cut. Leave it where it is or move it into a bond in your own name. There's no advantage to put it into the new company. Okay. Okay. Go for question 2.
Yep.
I work part-time. I earn about 18,000 a year. My husband works full-time. He earns about 60,000 a year. We also have a rental property that we would have a rental income from, and we put what's called maybe the extra income out of that, put it through my husband's work. He pays extra into his pension. So my question is, I have no pension, and any extra money we have, we put it through my husband's pension through his work. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Because I have no pension, because I'm not earning a huge amount, we do it through his because he's on the higher tax bracket, so we get more back on tax. But I'm wondering, how does that affect me in the long run? Thank you.
Really what I would see there's a couple of things, if we kind of unbundle that, right? First of all, she's on 18,000, he's on 60,000. She's probably paying little or no tax. At 18,000 euros, her tax credits are probably covered and she's paying little or no tax. The first rule is you put money into a pension because you get tax relief. If you're not if you're not paying tax,
if you're not reaching that point, there's no point.
Absolutely,
in paying into a
there's
pension.
no point in putting money into a pension. If you put money into a pension, one of the reasons is to get tax relief. If you've not got any tax, there's nothing to be relieved from, and therefore it doesn't make sense to put it in. Right, so that's the first point I would make. The second point I would make, though, there's rental income in the background for that person. Yeah. So it's possible that maybe the property is entirely in his name and her husband's name, and therefore none of the rental income falls to her. But let's say it's 20 grand a year in rental income and 10,000 of it's going to her. That means that 10,000 gets added to her 18,000 and she might be paying tax.
Yeah.
Now, unless the rent is ridiculous, she's probably never going to hit the higher rate of tax, unless she's getting 50% of the rent is a huge amount. But one of the things she should be considering there, and this is tax advice, and I'm a financial planner, not a tax planner, so just she could look at, particularly if there's no mortgage on it, it's much easier. But it might be an option to move that rental property into just her name, because she can get up to 42,000 euros a year at the lower rate of tax. Her husband's paying all of the rental income he's getting in off that property is going to be subject to the higher rate of tax. Does that make sense? Because I'm getting a bit complicated. So if there was a way, if there's no mortgage, it'll be much easier. If there is a mortgage, the bank will have to agree to it, where you just put the property entirely in her name, and now she has her 18,000 a year plus all of the rental income. And unless the rental income is more than 24 grand a year, she's going to pay it all at standard rate of tax. Okay? So that's one of the things she should consider. So on the face of it, you're looking at it going, okay, if she's not paying higher rate tax, utilise all the husbands, which is what she's doing, all the husbands' higher rate tax. And but there is another element that you need to consider. And I don't think it would depend on what way salaries go over the next couple of years for both of them as a couple, and depends on how much the rental income is. But if I have a couple with one of them has 1.6 million in a pension, okay, that's not as good as having a couple with each of them having 800,000 each in their pensions. Okay. So let's just go for the generic husband and wife, 800 grand each is better than husband having 1.6 million. Okay. And the reason for that is the maximum tax-free lump sum you can get out of your pension is 200,000 euros. Okay. So a husband with 1.6 million, and I don't mean very generic here, right? A husband with 1.6 million will take 400,000 out, 25% of the pot. The first 200,000 will be tax-free. The next 200,000 will be taxed at 20%. Right. So we now have a 40 grand tax bill on that. Okay. Whereas a husband and wife with 800,000 each are both getting 200,000 out tax-free. You have to weigh that up. You have to decide, okay, it's not worth it if I'm not getting the tax relief on the way in, but just watch that over time, watch the relationship with the rental income and try and decide where we're going, and be mindful of the fact that you both have an allowance of up to 200,000 tax-free coming out at the end.
So reevaluate as salaries change, and also for that particular scenario, try get the rental income into her name for tax.
I do remember having a client, and I made the suggestion to them. So they had their own home and they had another property, and the other property, and if they're listening, I'm sure they'll laugh at this, right? But the other property was in his name, and he was on the higher rate of tax, and she had no income in her name, right? Okay. And so she wasn't using her tax credits at all. Yeah. And I said, well, if you put that property into just her name, then all the rental income will go to her. And this is how you use the tax system. Like there's no problem with doing this stuff, right? And I put it all into her name. Go and get some tax advice. Put the property into her name. All the rental income comes in her name now. And in that case, they would have no tax liability on the rental income now, because they just use her tax credits towards it, right? Yeah. And about 6 months later, they were back in the office and we were having a chat. I said, oh, how did that get on? Did you do it? Yeah, we did that actually. Great. We got it sorted out. Tax advice was right. We've got the legal and it's great. And he turned around and she goes, yeah, it's great. We have a house each now. And she goes, no. I have a house and a half. So just be careful. Maybe don't let your husband hear that. If the person who questioned it, don't let your husband hear the end of the story. But maybe look at getting some tax advice and getting some legal advice about putting it into your name and maybe using some more of your tax credits and your standard rate tax threshold. Mm-hmm. We go for another one?
Yeah. So the final one is one, and you've kind of touched on it a bit. It's one that came in through text. So the question is, how much tax do we actually save on pensions, considering we still pay tax on the way out?
Okay. So the tax relief on pensions is fairly straightforward. We can earn now, it's up to, what is it after this current budget? From the 1st of January, it's 40,000 this year. From the 1st of January, I think it's 42,000 or 41.
Yeah, it's around, I think it's 42.
Yeah, 42,000. So up to 42,000 euros a year, we pay 20% tax.
Yeah.
Over 42,000 euros a year, we pay 40% tax. I'm only talking about income tax. Forget about PRSI and USC for a second. So if you're on 40 grand a year and you put 10 grand into a pension, you will get 20% tax relief on that. So it'll cost you 8,000 euros to put 10,000 euros in. Yeah. Okay. Now there's limits to what you can put in, but just let me keep the math simple.
Yeah.
So you're on 40 grand a year, you're paying tax at 20%, you put 10 grand in, it'll cost you 8,000 euros to put 10,000 euros in because you'll pay 2,000 euros less in tax, 20%. If you're on 50 grand a year, and you put 10,000 euros in, right? And let's assume from the 1st of January. Your threshold is 42,000. You will actually get 40% relief on 8,000 of it.
Yeah.
And 20% relief on 2,000 of it. Okay? Now, if you're on 60,000 euros a year and you put 10,000 euros in, you'll get it all at 40%. Okay? So that means it's costing you, if you're getting it all at 40%, it's costing you 6,000 euros to put 10,000 euros into your pension because you write a check for 10,000 euros and you pay 4,000 euros less in tax. Okay? That's the first benefit from a pension perspective. You can turn 6 grand into 10 grand.
Yeah.
Okay? The second benefit is, though, when it's in there, it grows tax-free.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So you make a profit, the interest comes in, you don't have to pay any tax on that. So it's growing tax-free and the compound effect on that is quite heavy. It can be really advantageous. Okay? And then finally you hit retirement, and there's a couple of different ways you can draw down the pension, but the general way that's been used in the last 10, 15 years or so is you take 25% of whatever's in the pot. So let's imagine you build it up to keep the math simple, €1 million. You get 25% of the pot, 250,000 euros comes out as your lump sum.
Yeah.
The first 200,000 of the lump sum is taxed at 0%.
Okay.
The next 300,000 of any lump sum is taxed at 20%.
Okay.
Okay. So in that case, we have $1 million in the pot. You're taking 250,000 out tax. Sorry, 250,000 out as a lump sum, 200,000 tax free, 50 grand at 20%. So you end up with 240,000 euros of a lump sum tax paid.
Okay.
Is that making sense?
Yeah.
You're with me because I know there's a lot of figures. You now still have the other 750 grand sitting on the side.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes into another account. And when it sits in the other account, when you take money out of that, it is subject to income tax.
Okay.
Okay. And how much income tax you're going to pay is actually the exact same rules we're talking about already. The first 42,000 of any withdrawals or of your total income for the year, including the withdrawals for this, are going to be at 20%. It's the same. You get tax credits. It's the exact same rules apply.
Yeah.
So what people often get caught up in is, oh, sure, I have to pay tax. I'm getting tax relief in the way in, but I'm paying tax in the way out. Lots of people end up in a position where, like when I said €1 million up there a minute ago, people might have been sitting at home listening to this going, who's ever going to have €1 million in their pension pot, right? Yeah. If you think about it, you take 4% a year out of your pension, that 750 grand that's left over, you only take 4% a year out of that. That's what government force you to do. If you don't take 4% a year out, they're going to tax you as if you did. Okay? So you're going to get hit with income tax.
So you have to
but think about
take
it.
4%.
Keep the math simple. If you had €1 million left in your pension pot after taking your lump sum, 4% of that is 40 grand a year. You're still only paying tax at 20%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So most people are paying 20% tax on the way out.
Yeah.
So, and if you're only getting 20 grand a year out of it, your tax credits are probably going to cover most of it. You're going to pay zero tax on it.
Yeah.
And I've crunched these numbers so many times. And actually, Amanda, I think that's something we should probably do some type of graphic on for Instagram, that we show this is how much you're getting on the way in, this is how much you're getting on the way out.
Yeah.
I'm putting you under pressure now. You're going to have to do that one. But I do think it's one of these things. That's a very complicated, convoluted journey, financial kind of math journey I've just brought everyone on.
Yeah.
The point I would make about this is I have crunched these numbers for 20 plus years, right? I've been doing this for years. There is no better way for an employee to save their before tax income for their retirement.
Yeah.
Full stop. The tax flushes through and it still works. You get tax relief on the way in. Yes, you pay tax on the way out. But you know what? The tax you're paying on the way out is more often than not considerably less.
Yeah.
And even where you do still pay it, if you were paying it all at the higher rate of tax, you still have to take the tax-free lump sum into account and the tax-free growth into account. This is not a broken system. They're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. The reason why government make this why they try and incentivize everyone to do this is because when you're 76 years of age, if you're okay financially because you've got a decent pension, because you've got the tax relief along the way in, you are easier on the state in terms of how much costs them that they have to put towards you. You're still a voter at 76. You still need to use the public services. But if you've got some of your own funds, some of the other things, you're less reliant on the state. And that's what they're trying to get you to.
Yeah.
There's nothing else going on here. Like there's no conspiracy theory around, oh, it's just a trick. This is what it is. They're trying to tip it. That's not the case. Pensions are there. So governments have an easier time with you when you're 76 and 78 and 88 years of age and you're not relying on them as much. Make sense?
Yeah. Long answer, but I think it, definitely made sense and is worth.
It just like
it's worth it, no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah.
And it made me even, because sometimes people I think compare like for like and forget about that growth period in between as well. Which is
the tax-free growth is massive. That makes a massive difference.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Any call-outs this week, Amanda? Anything you want to say to the listeners?
Yeah, no, just thanks so much for everyone who is submitting their questions. We still have a bank of questions, is what I will say. But we're always looking for more on loads of different topics. But do keep an eye out on the Instagram for specific topics that we are looking for, say, the next week recording. And if you do have a question that you'd like to submit, the number is 087 291 0507. That's 087 291 0507.
And if I want my question answered, what's the best way of trying to get it answered? Is it to send it to you by text, Amanda? Or how would you like it to be? WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is the best way. Short voice note, something that we can get to.
Okay, so I have a much better chance that my question is going to be answered if I send a voice note as opposed to a text. Okay. No, and it does. Appreciate you guys. I know it takes a few minutes to do these things, but hopefully you're getting something out of it. And we have got some great guest suggestions. We've got lots of people, some of the suggestions for people who want to come on is great, and we will get to them. We just need to fit them into the right topic on the right week.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.